Braving the heavy downpour, the lone survivor frantically secures a colorful tarp over his small bamboo raft. With the storm raging around him, he grabs a long pole to push against the strong river current. His efforts soon pay off when he manages to catch a shiny fish to serve as his dinner. As night falls over the water, he shares the warm cooked meal inside the shelter with his dogs. The next morning brings no relief as the man struggles to fix the fragile roof of his raft. He carefully ties the bamboo frame together to ensure the shelter won't collapse during another fierce storm. Knowing that the weather remains unpredictable, he reinforces every knot on the vibrantly colored canopy overhead. With the shelter temporarily secured, he sits near the edge to navigate the raft down the gray river. His faithful brown dog watches closely as the survivor uses the wooden pole to steer clear of obstacles. The journey continues down the murky waterway, flanked by dense green mangroves that offer little actual protection. He keeps a watchful eye on the treacherous river currents while his canine companions remain calmly beside him. Pushing forward relentlessly, the man hopes to find a safer spot to anchor his floating makeshift home today. The simple bamboo structure continues to drift slowly, carrying its weary passengers through the unforgiving wet wilderness. Approaching a thick cluster of mangrove roots, he carefully maneuvers the long wooden pole to dock the raft. One of the dogs bravely stands at the edge, sniffing the damp air as they finally come to a halt. Seeking refuge from the biting cold, the man retreats inside the cramped shelter to comfort his shivering pets. He gently rubs down the wet dog with a large cloth, prioritizing the animal's warmth over his own comfort. To protect the dog from further chills, he tightly wraps a thick blanket around its trembling little body. He fastens the fabric like a protective coat, ensuring his loyal companion will stay snug despite the nasty weather. The bundle of warmth immediately calms the dog down, allowing it to rest safely inside the floating tent. Taking a brief moment to breathe, the survivor sits quietly within the colorful but flimsy shelter structure. He reorganizes his few belongings inside the tight space, preparing for the upcoming challenges of the rainy afternoon. Knowing they still need more food, he steps back outside to gather his simple fishing gear and supplies. He carefully inspects the tangled fishing line, making sure there are no weak spots that could snap easily. With practiced hands, he patiently readies the fishing rod, hoping the murky river will yield another good meal. He then skillfully cuts up some small pieces of bait, tossing the scraps directly onto the wet bamboo floor. Once the hook is properly baited, he prepares to cast his line out into the vast gray water. Meanwhile, both dogs remain fast asleep, comfortably wrapped in their cozy makeshift coats inside the warm tent. The man casts his line far out into the river, settling into a patient rhythm of waiting. Suddenly, the tip of the rod bends sharply, and he begins frantically reeling in his struggling catch. A smile lights up his face as he hoists up a sizable silverfish from the dark waters. He wastes no time in preparing the catch, efficiently scraping the scales off right on the damp deck. After cleaning the fish, he portions out the meat to ensure they have enough food for the day. With dinner secured, he retreats back into the small shelter to escape the relentless drizzle outside. He sits quietly by the entrance, staring out over the vast river while keeping an eye on his lines. The fishing rods are firmly planted on the edge, their green indicators bobbing gently with the water's flow. Under the gloomy gray sky, the lines remain motionless, testing the isolated survivor's enduring patience today. Noticing a slight tug, the man quickly grabs the rod and prepares to haul in another potential catch. He cranks the reel steadily, expertly battling against whatever creature is fighting on the other end. Unfortunately, the hook comes up empty, forcing him to readjust the bait and try his luck once again. As the wind picks up, he has to reach up and forcefully secure the central bamboo pole supporting the roof. He makes sure the colorful canopy is tightly fastened so the sudden gusts won't blow it away. Exhausted by the constant maintenance, he lies down inside to rest while his dog snuggles close beside him. After a brief nap, he resumes his post at the edge of the raft, holding onto the fishing rod. The quiet routine of survival fishing continues, accompanied only by the sound of the gentle rain falling. He heads back inside to check on his dog, offering a gentle pat to reassure his furry friend. Knowing hydration is crucial, he pours some fresh water into a small bowl for the thirsty animal to drink. He then returns to the fishing lines, determined to catch just a little more food before nightfall. He sits patiently on the slippery bamboo planks, holding the rod steady against the river's tug. The two loyal dogs sit nearby, keeping their master company during the long, monotonous hours of waiting. He keeps his eyes fixed on the line, hoping the sudden change in water current will bring fish closer. The tranquility is broken when the line pulls taut, signaling that a hungry fish has finally taken the bait. He rapidly turns the handle of the reel, pulling the struggling catch closer to the bamboo edge. A beautiful spotted fish emerges from the water, proving that his persistence has once again paid off today. He carefully unhooks the flapping creature, making sure not to lose his hard-earned dinner back into the river. Proud of his success, he holds the fresh catch up for a brief moment of quiet celebration. He brings the fish inside the shelter, where the dogs eagerly await their share of the upcoming feast. The man sits under the colorful roof, momentarily enjoying the peaceful shelter as dark clouds gather overhead. Seeing a massive storm approaching, he hastily pulls down a large green tarp to completely seal the entrance. He covers the entire front opening, transforming the flimsy tent into a waterproof cocoon against the driving rain. Safely enclosed within the makeshift walls, the man and his dogs wait out the torrential downpour outside. The fishing rods are left abandoned in the heavy rain, swaying wildly as the storm intensifies around them. Despite the weather, he crouches on the wet deck to reel in the remaining lines before they tangle. He rushes back to fix a loose corner of the green tarp, fighting against the powerful winds. The stormy landscape looks incredibly bleak as the man washes his hands in the turbulent gray water. He struggles to keep the heavy tarp from blowing away, using his body weight to hold it down. The relentless downpour completely drenches him. He desperately tries to secure their only form of shelter. After finally tying the plastic cover securely, he climbs back inside, shivering and completely soaked to the bone. Realizing their position is unsafe, he later emerges to pull the heavy mooring rope through the pouring rain. He furiously paddles the raft with the wooden pole, trying to navigate away from the dangerous open water. The rough river makes steering almost impossible, but he pushes with all his remaining strength against the current. Once reaching a slightly calmer area, he jumps out to adjust the protective tarp cover once more. Inside the dimly lit shelter, he focuses on drying the shivering dogs with whatever rags he can find. He wraps a clean, dry blanket around the smaller dog, ensuring it stays warm despite the freezing conditions. He then reaches up to tighten the overhead bamboo supports, reinforcing the roof against the ongoing storm. Outside, the heavy rain continues to batter the river surface, creating a chaotic and noisy environment today. The distant mangrove forest is barely visible through the thick sheets of gray rain, sweeping across the water. He eventually steers the raft deep into the mangrove roots, finding a natural windbreak among the trees. Exhausted from the ordeal, he lays out his sleeping mat and pulls the heavy blanket over himself. He curls up next to his sleeping dog, finally able to rest as the raft safely anchors itself. The storm slowly begins to pass, leaving the river surface calm and quiet near the sheltering mangrove trees. Waking up later, he heads outside to clean his cooking equipment in the river, preparing for dinner. He thoroughly washes the pots and pans, making sure everything is ready for the evening's meal preparation. Back inside, he sets up his small stove and places the cooking pot carefully over the metal grate. He breaks up some dry twigs he managed to save, feeding the small fire to boil water. He scoops out a generous portion of white rice from a plastic bag, ready to cook their staple food. He pours fresh drinking water into the pot with the rice, setting it over the crackling flames to simmer. He places a black kettle on the roaring fire to quickly boil water for their hot evening tea. As the fire burns steadily, he prepares his frying pan to cook the fish he caught earlier today. He moves back out to the deck to finish cleaning and slicing the spotted fish with his large knife. He meticulously cuts the meat into perfectly sized portions, ensuring nothing from his hard-earned cash goes to waste. With the ingredients prepared, he retreats to the warmth of the shelter, where the fire is glowing brightly. He sits cross-legged by the stove, enjoying the comforting heat radiating from the small, contained flames inside. He occasionally glances outside, making sure the weather remains stable while his simple dinner continues to cook slowly. The water in the black kettle begins to boil vigorously, sending thick plumes of steam up to the roof. Outside, the tangled mangrove roots are completely enveloped by the creeping darkness as night fully sets in. He continues slicing the fish on his blue mat, working skillfully even in the fading twilight hours. The sharp knife easily glides through the thick meat, preparing the main course for their well-deserved evening feast. He carefully fillets the fresh catch, taking pride in the rewarding results of his strenuous daily survival routine. He uses a metal pot to wash the raw fish slices directly in the flowing river water beside him. He gives the fish a final rinse, ensuring it's completely clean before bringing it into the cooking area. Under the glow of a small lantern, he arranges his makeshift kitchen to begin the final cooking process. The warm light illuminates the cramped space as he focuses entirely on preparing a delicious, hot meal tonight. He heats up the wok over the bright orange flames, getting it extremely hot before adding the ingredients. He carefully pours some cooking oil and crushed spices into the pan, immediately releasing a fragrant, mouth-watering aroma. He stirs the seasoned sauce constantly to prevent it from burning over the intense, crackling wood fire heat. Once the spicy mixture is bubbling perfectly, he gently lays the large fish pieces into the hot pan. The fish sizzles loudly as it hits the hot oil, absorbing all the rich flavors of the sauce. He watches the food cook intently, ensuring the meat turns perfectly tender and fully cooked all the way through. To finish the dish, he sprinkles freshly chopped green herbs over the simmering fish for extra flavor. He places a heavy metal lid on the wok, allowing the savory stew to simmer and thicken nicely. While waiting for the main course to finish, he sits back and enjoys the comforting warmth of the fire. He periodically opens the lid to check on the stew, sending clouds of delicious steam into the tiny tent. The rich, flavorful broth bubbles gently around the tender fish, signaling that dinner is finally ready to eat. He gives the savory stew one last gentle stir, perfectly mixing the soft fish with the thick, aromatic sauce. With the food completely cooked, he begins portioning out the hot, nutritious meal for himself and his pets. He generously fills to plastic containers with the warm food, making sure his loyal dogs eat first. The hungry dogs eagerly devour the delicious dinner, incredibly grateful for their master's hard work throughout the day. He finally sits down to enjoy his own portion, savoring every single bite of the fresh, satisfying fish. After finishing the hearty meal, he takes a long, refreshing drink from his large blue water bottle. He pours some remaining clean water into the dogs' bowls, making sure they are well hydrated before bedtime. With their bellies full, the man begins cleaning up the small shelter, preparing the space for a night's rest. He affectionately rubs his dog's head, sharing a quiet, tender moment of connection after a very long day. He meticulously organizes his camping gear, keeping the extremely tight space as tidy and functional as possible. The two tired dogs sprawl comfortably on the bamboo floor, completely feeling safe under his watchful care. He settles down on his sleeping mat, wrapping his warm jacket tightly around himself against the night chill. He reaches up and securely fastens the shelter entrance, blocking out the cold wind before going to sleep. He finally turns out the small lantern overhead, plunging the tiny floating home into complete, peaceful darkness. The exhausted survivor and his faithful companions drift off to sleep, gently rocked by the calm river waters. Inside the pitch-black shelter, they rest deeply, gathering their much-needed strength to face whatever tomorrow will bring. The raft floats quietly in the dark, safely anchored in the sheltering embrace of the dense mangrove forest.